Hello, everybody. It's Dave Neal, stand-up comedian and host of Bachelor Nation News. In this video, we've got a non-bachelor topic, but one that's near and dear to me, which is the Los Angeles comedy scene. I've spent the last 10 years performing in Los Angeles, just moved to Tennessee, but I still call it one of my homes. And now we have a male comedian attacking a female comedian, allegedly, and I have to say that because I've not seen the footage, although I have every reason to believe the victim is telling the truth here, just for my own sake, having been sued and threatened with lawsuits already this year. We're using the word allegedly, but let it be known, I completely believe her. The problem is that the Los Angeles County District Attorney's Office, I guess, is not going to be charging this comedian, this male comedian, for attacking her. I want to read everything she had to say and try to use my platform to help put pressure on the district's attorney's office. As you guys know, we covered Bachelor Clayton Echard's paternity lawsuit with Laura Owens in Arizona, to the point where our audience was able to put enough pressure on county prosecutors to investigate Laura for fraud, which is important because these are elected positions and people need to know that they will be held accountable. And if our elected officials are just going to let crimes be committed on the streets of one of our beloved cities, we have to speak up. We have to speak up. So I'll share everything that was said. I have to tell you this. When I first heard of this story, I thought, so-and-so shoved me. There must have been assault. No, this looks as if it was a deliberate attack. And when I heard this took place, it happened at one of my favorite comedy venues, Fourth Wall Cafe. And I go, there's a weed shop next door, a tire store 2 doors down. They have to have security footage. Well, as I'm being told, there is security footage of this. Again, if he has some defense he needs to make, let it play out in court. Like he's entitled to that, defense. But it looks as though it's ugly. And to think that you can get away with this, we can't let it happen in normal society. And within my comedy world, it's a place that they have this saying, "Oh, comedy's dangerous," and we scoff at it. It's like, all right, I get it, yeah. Don't get me wrong. People will do a joke and it'll go sideways on stage. They'll get attacked. You'll have audience members follow you to your car. It's dangerous enough for a guy. What women have to deal with in the world of comedy, and I hesitate to say female comedians because that almost sounds degrading because they're every bit much super successful, and there's hilarious comedians of all genders in Los Angeles. But what women have to deal with in the comedy world is audience members hitting on them after the shows and getting touchy and feely, or trying to run their jokes by them and not believe that they're funny. But also, and the scary part is, women have to promote where they're going to be at a stand-up show, and men are creeps. Let's just call it what it is. So it's already hard enough having to deal with an audience if you're a woman in comedy, but you shouldn't have to worry about your comedy brethren and your comedy family. In this case, it looks as if the Los Angeles comedy scene let her down, at least in the sense that this comedian's walking free and not even being investigated. So anyway, let's get into what she had to say. But by all means, I do think there is a ton of people speaking out, both men and women, about this. And again, when I'm done reading this, if you could just take a look at the mailbox number here, and hard copy mailing seems to be the best thing to do. So here's what she had to say. As some of you may have heard, Ian Russo assaulted me on Thursday, September 26, 2024, around noon at the sidewalk in front of Fourth Wall Cafe. Fourth Wall Cafe is a comedy venue. You do open mics and perform shows. I perform there a bunch. It's it's a place where you run your set in front of like 5 or 6 people. You work on things and comics show up. I'm writing to share I am not okay. I'm asking people to stop him from endangering myself and others by contacting LAPD and the district attorney to actually do something about this case. I want to thank people who have reached out to check up on me, venues who've banned him, and comics who've spread the word that he's dangerous. It's really meant a lot to me. Another shout out to the comics who were there that day and offered me their support. I'll avoid using names for privacy. Is that the first page? Okay. Since the attack, I've stayed mostly inside. I had a concussion and had to go to urgent care. I get dizzy. I woke up one morning with blurry vision. I randomly burst out crying and feel anxious and depressed. Meanwhile, Ian has not been arrested. And the day after he attacked me, he went back to Fourth Wall to do a mic like nothing happened. He had no remorse. Luckily, the venue banned him and he was forced to leave. But did he care that he, a large male, assaulted unprovoked a smaller woman in daylight in front of our peers? No. And this is where it gets crazy to me, because it's not a he said, she said. It's a there is evidence, there are witnesses, there are video, and just brazen and shouldn't happen. Absolutely not. Between comedians, at the very least, it shouldn't happen between anybody. And the one thing that we can control is comics book shows. We can make sure that that this, you say get ran out of town, but honestly, I know in New York, comedy and other places have already, banned him. For those wondering why he attacked me in 2022, Ian appeared in my documentary, Breaking the Fourth Wall. He went to the premiere in February of 2023, and he hated how he was portrayed. I told him I had no malicious intent, and I spent hours trying to reassure him. Nothing I said could change his mind, and he badmouthed me publicly, saying I was out to get him, trying to rally other comics to hate me. I tried to be civil with him when I saw him, but he'd used those opportunities to say rude things to me. Eventually, I gave up and blocked him online and avoided him in person. Even though I tried to avoid him, he would show up to places where I had publicly signed up, but he was not on the list. He'd glare at me or try to be rude, but I'd just ignore him. I think the ignoring inflamed him the most, because what he seemed to really want from me was the hours of listening to him yell at me, which I was no longer willing to do. On September 26th, I walked to Fourth Wall Cafe, and Ian and a comic I don't know are there. Like usual, I had signed up and Ian hadn't, but he showed up anyway, even though there was no spots. The doors are locked. Ian sees me, and without even a greeting, he says angrily, "Your Wikipedia is fake." He's glaring at me like my Wikipedia had done something to him, and I try to brush him off. The other comic doesn't know us and tries to make jokes. Ian goes in again. "Your Wikipedia is fake." I'm freaked out that he's so angry and that he Googles me in his private time and feels he has to confront me over his findings, so I try to walk away. This infuriates him, so he slaps my coffee out of my hand. It splatters all over the sidewalk. I'm shocked. Within seconds, but feeling like slow motion, I then watch as Ian suddenly starts unscrewing his water bottle, and I think, please God, don't let that be acid or hot coffee. He's about a foot taller than me and 100 pounds more than me, and he drenches me with liquid. I'm stunned, but thankful it's just water. This all happens so fast that the next step completely surprises me. He takes his heavy metal water bottle and smashes it into the back of my head. It feels like a baseball bat. It hurt, but I felt relief that he only hit once before he freaks out and runs away. I believe he came to his senses because comics nearby sprang to action. I believe if we were alone, he would have beat me to death. Ian runs away and a comic chases after him. Ian gets in his car and sideswipes vehicles and property before escaping. Meanwhile, I call 911 and try my best to keep it together because I'm in such shock. The 911 operator tells me the police will call me when they arrive. The comics and me go to Fourth Wall Cafe and we sit down, all shaken by the crazy thing we all experienced. Suddenly, the trauma and physical pain of being assaulted overpowers me and I burst into tears. Comics console me and I try to pull myself together even though no one expects me to. I'm so embarrassed and scared by what happened. I just hate feeling so weak. And I hate that a jerk like Ian Russo took to violence for him to feel stronger than me. Yeah, dude, you can physically kill me. Congratulations, you tried. After 45 minutes, the cops finally come and ask if I want a paramedic. I say no because I have bad health insurance and don't want to pay for the care. I ask the cops if they'll arrest Ian because I have witnesses, have previously been harassed and stalked by him, and there's video of the incident captured by the weed store next door. The cops say Ian won't be arrested because assault and battery is a misdemeanor. I tell them he used his metal bottle as a weapon. Still won't arrest him. I tell him he damaged cars and property as he sped away. Still won't arrest him. I ask if he'll face any consequences, and they say it's up to the district attorney. I go home that day, and after a few hours, that's when I feel dizzy, and I go to urgent care. I find out I have a concussion. I cancel my weekend shows and mics because I don't think physically or emotionally I can do it. Meanwhile, Ian freely goes around town, and I receive private messages about how Ian allegedly steals, damages equipment, berates other comics, says racist and homophobic things, and now adding to the list, he hits and runs both at women in random cars. His favorite weapon is metal. I really have worked on myself to be strong, but I grew up in an abusive household and my first boyfriend was abused and assaulted me during one of his psychotic episodes. I've spent years trying to overcome a fear of violent men and being a woman in comedy. Hell, being anyone in comedy is not easy, but adding violence is an extra layer of difficulty that isn't acceptable. Although I can logically tell myself that I shouldn't live in fear, Ian's unprovoked violent assault will forever add more to my trauma. He should not be allowed to do this, and he's fully capable of doing this again to me or anyone. He's fully capable of escalating his violence. He has no empathy or logic. To anyone reading this, please contact the district attorney to prosecute Ian and put him in jail. Enough is enough. And then there's the email. I urge people to send a hard copy message that usually works better than email. Hard copy, write it out, print it, whatever, mail it if you can. If you can't do that, email. But, I think, comics, I've said this before about the Clayton Echard case. Comedians, we are a union in the sense that we understand how privileged we are to do what we do, and there's only so many people that do that. And there are ways that comedy club owners take from comedians, exploit them. There's ways that it's incredibly hard to find audience because it's such a competitive world. It's a lot of living in poverty and living, paycheck to paycheck. So many comedian friends I know live out of their cars, all so that they can get on stage and tell jokes and try to be funny and try to bring people together. So when you see something like this, comedians come together. I know I said before that the LA comedy scene let down Teresa. I don't mean that in the sense that comedians let her down, just the fact that now in the back of her mind, she's got this worry she's going to carry with her that comedy is bad, that it'll lead to violence, and it should not be that way. We live in a first world country. We should be able to, and by the way, I understand people that get into comedy, a lot of them have mental health issues. That's no excuse for the prosecutors not doing their dang job here. And you might say, well, they've got bigger fish to fry. Well, then they need to do a better job of having an infrastructure to be able to handle things, to make the streets safe. So either way, people have spoke out about this. Here's another reel.
What happened to Teresa Lowe is an absolute female comics nightmare. I don't think people would understand how female comics or LGBTQ comics go to gigs with the fear of their own safety. I wish that I could just thinking about material and do what I love, but that's not always the case because we never know what triggers male comics.
And look, the deal is, it is the bad apples that ruin it for others. And the only way in most cases to get justice is for comics to stick together and make sure that we clean the streets up ourselves. Now, I don't mean that in a vigilante justice kind of way. I just mean that in a, you gotta keep people like that from performing, and we have to do a better job of talking. And I know a lot of times women in comedy will complain that the men aren't sticking up for them. And I think in some cases, there are instances where you don't even know that this is going on because so much predatory behaviors behind closed doors or in someone's DMs or whatnot. And I'm not saying that as an excuse. I'm just saying that to show that we need to have a better coalition and we need to do a better job of protecting our fellow comedians and the women in our lives. And just knowing, Ian and Teresa, to an extent, having done mics and shows with them, I can just say that this does not fly. I will be giving updates. I'm sure we'll have them. They will come on the podcast if I can't make a video about it. And because I talked about this on the morning episode of the podcast, the new documentary with Will Ferrell and his friend who came out as trans and transitioned later in life in his late 50s, early 60s. And you get to see that you become a target for certain people. And, I've got that privilege I'm aware of, that I can do my act and walk back to my car and not worry that someone's going to chase me down or not worry about my, physical well-being. And not everyone has that privilege. And Teresa certainly had that robbed from her. So again, I'll post a link in the comment section if you want to write to the district attorney. Everyone can help. You don't have to just live in California. You can write to them and let them know you're watching and you think that, we shouldn't live in a world where people can just get attacked in broad daylight on the street. All right, folks, I got a lot of content coming your way. We'll be right back.